in the course of my comments. In this particular book, I use the phrase, we who pray in the religion of Jesus, and we who pray by religion to Jesus, have joined together in this enterprise. Let me repeat that phrase again. It sounds so similar, but it really isn't. We who pray or worship in the religion of Jesus. Well, the religion of Jesus, Buddhism? No. Is it Gnosticism? No. Judaism? Yeah, I think so. Jesus is a Hebrew. He prays with us, we pray with him. A Jew prays with a Jew. Don't you understand? We who pray the religion of Jesus, and we who pray by religion to Jesus. The religion to Jesus is my neat way of saying Christians. In their religion, they pray to Jesus. In my understanding, Jesus prays in my religion, not to Jesus. A clear distinction is made. It's not at all heard when you hear it the first time. You've got to reflect upon it again and again. So reclaiming Jesus to Judaism, and the portrait in the Jerusalem Post with the review having Jesus with phylacteries on his head brings me now to the next point. I think what needs to be done, as I read that verse already from the Corinthians, is to take a look at what's called the Great Commandments. In the New Testament, there is a chapter, there are verses which have a nice name to it. This one is called the Great Commandments. I have my parallel New Testament in front of me right now. Let me just show you what this is. This is the parallel, the gospel parallels, which applies one. It says here a comparison of synoptic gospels. For those who are untutored in the New Testament, the academic words are following. The first 4 books of the New Testament is the equivalent of what you call the Torah. The Torah in Jewish tradition, let's do some writing on the board, is the 5 books of Moses, often seen as the pinnacle of Jewish scripture. The word Torah represents the 5 books of Moses, and basically the books which go from Genesis to Exodus, Leviticus, and then there is Numbers and Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is Deutero, second Torah, repetition, if you will, of highlights of the first books, particularly books 2, 3, and 4. Then Jews have a second section called Nevi'im. The word Nevi'im, basically Nevi'im, see if I spell it right. I'm sorry, people, I gotta go Hebrew. Nevi'im, which are the prophetic books. The title is very misleading. Books from 1 Samuel, or rather Joshua, Judges, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, Judges 1, Judges 2, may have some prophetic oracles here and there, but they are not prophetic books. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel are the big 3. Then you got a gang called the Triasar, the group of the 12, because of their size. Amos is one, Micah is another, and the shortest book of the Hebrew Bible, which you can test your rabbi or your priest or your minister or your friends over a party one day, the shortest book of the Hebrew Bible is 1 chapter. It's called Obadiah. Obadiah is how we Christians refer to it. Ovadja, servant of God, is how the Jews refer to it. Don't be thrown by my language. We Christians, we Jews, I have a tendency of saying we, and I taught before the Messianic College of King's University. The actual person introduced me said, Zev, who are you? You say, we Messianics? I talk this way to bring everybody into it. I got to watch my words. So please understand, if I say we Christians, it's not being impolite. Christians, okay, say Obadiah. Jews, if they know their Hebrew titles of the book, say Ovadja. So the second section is heavily innuended by the big 3 prophets, so it's called prophetic section. It's also historical material. Then the third part is called Ketuvim. The Ketuvim is called the writings. I like the word writings. The other fancy word is hagiographa. Once you go in with this Greek or Latin with me, I got a problem with that. The word grapha is writing, hagia is holy, so holy writings. And one of the books that make up the holy writings, I guess, is the book of all books, whatever book, a book that's known as Psalms. And also in the book of the holy writings is a book called Chronicles, and there is a verse I need to talk to you right now. Please bear with me. Part of my problem is, Schnook, you bring so much paper with you, you don't know what the hell you have here, and that's it. People, I'm not going to be a fancy professor who brings his books and brings this and that. I schlep everything, it's going to schlep right now.
Just need a bigger table.
No bigger table, but it's your chancellor. I'm serious. Before I leave this campus, I'm going to be the head of this new university. If you don't think I have the chutzpah to walk in that office, you're mistaken. I have First Chronicles. Get down the reference. First Chronicles, chapter 17. Divrei Hayamim is called Divrei Hayamim, the words of the days. The Hebrew word, let me just build up on this. The word Divrei Hayamim is the terminology we use in the Hebrew language for Jewish religious history. By that is meant Jewish chronicles, Jewish history, sacred history, maybe that's a better term, is known in English as chronicles, but among the Jews who use the Hebrew language with reverence, the word Divrei Hayamim is the word for history. And the word historia is a word for general history, which makes it called trait for history. History of what you should know about America, about this and that. It's not sacred history. Sacred history is Divrei Hayamim. I need you to know that because the Jesus story is part of sacred history. It's not necessarily part of secular academic history, and so it's crucial that I make reference to Divrei Hayamim as sacred history. In the sacred history of the book of Chronicles, which is meant to resume or to recapitulate the various events of Jewish history, there's a verse that has the following phrase. The phrase needs to be read in Hebrew, and I'll try to read the translation in English. Hashem, with reference to the word Lord. Ein kamoka. Hashem ein kamoka ve'ein elokim zulatecha. Meaning, Lord, there is none like you, and no other gods aside you. All that we have heard in our ears, all that has been passed on. When you shomei us something, hear, O Israel, as in Shema Yisrael. When you do a reading, reading is another verbal action. To read is a text in hand, is a Torah shebektav, is a Torah that's written. And when something is heard, it's not necessarily written. Or when something is heard, maybe something written, but something taught. Keep those phrases in mind. Reading ain't the same as hearing. You can read and hear, or you can just hear by itself and not read. According to this text, all that our ears have heard, which implies about the text I'm about to read, is not inscribed. This tradition I'm about to read. And right away, your mind should be perked up. It's mystique. It's mystique. And I'll read to you the hidden secrets. What exactly is this mysterious message? Who is like you who is like, I hate this English, who is like thy people Israel, a nation one on earth, whom God went to redeem unto himself for a people, to make their name, to make his name, God's name, a great and tremendous things, in driving out nations from before your people, whom you did redeem out of Egypt. I like the Hebrew, say with me. Mika Amcha Yisrael Goyechad Ba'aretz. Who is like you, my nation Israel? Who is like you, Israel? Goyechad, one nation. Goy, 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 goy. The word goy is the Hebrew word which means nation. The word am is the Hebrew word which means people. Please note the usage of Hebrew. Goy is not a derogatory term. Gentile is not a derogatory term. First time Israel is called by any reference is a goy kadosh, a holy goy. The chapter right before the Ten Commandments in Exodus chapter 19 there. The word goy means a Gentile, means a nation. Israel is called a goy. When the word is used as am, there's something special about that word am. Am means, from the Hebrew word togetherness, as I play upon Hebrew now, and that means there is something that is unified, referred to in Ken's remark before as an MOT, member of the tribe. Note the distinction. One is people, one is nation. Peoplehood is togetherness. Note also the powerful words of the daughter of a cursed people known as the Moabites, who are cursed to no end. And yet a woman of that particular cursed group called the Moabim, the Moabites, says to her mother-in-law Naomi, where thou goest, I goest. Her words were, your people is my people. And then, your God is my God. Note the reference, your people, before God. And in one sweep, you can now understand why atheist, agnostic, deniers of God are very much part of the Jewish fold, whereas Messianic Jews have a problem. Judaism's emphasis is peoplehood. Well, so do the Messianics have peoplehood. It's part of who they are. They feel very strongly about it. The difference with the agnostics is that the Messianics add Jesus as Lord, God, and Savior. That is the cutting edge. Who is like you, one nation upon the earth, says God. And by suggesting that, God redeemed the people, and also suggesting, as it goes with the people's freedom, so does God's fame also go. Ladies and gentlemen, the phylacteries I was referring to before. Not only does Israel, the people, have to read the phylacteries, I'll get to that in the demonstration in a second. God Almighty, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In my grandfather's generation, God was called the Eibishter. You're going to have to learn Yiddish. The Eibishter is a word you can't trust. Eibishter, Almighty God. God wears tefillin. I purposely been wearing this prayer shawl because in the way in which we interpret God in our traditions, God also wears tefillin. He wears also talis. He covers himself over so well you cannot see the image of God. And we're told the story every Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, two of the greatest legacies found in Jewish tradition. One called Mashiach ben David, and one called Yitzchak ben Abraham. Isaac, the son of Abraham, understood the first seed of Abraham, our father, is Isaac. And the talk I'll give on video, where we learn the Akedah, chapter 22. I wrote a whole chapter for a Messianic Bible on the Akedah. And I have a section on the Akedah, the crucifixion. That's a clear sign, Zev, you've gone over to them. On the contrary, then the whole crucifixion of Jesus is frankly nothing more than a Gentile attempt to deal with the Akedah, the body of Isaac. With Isaac being bounded up, but Isaac being released. With Abraham saying, what about what's going on? The test of Abraham. And Yitzchak, his son, not a 5-year-old kid, but somebody in his 30s, said, Abba, as I'm paraphrasing, you go ahead and do it. I'm not afraid. Sacrifice me. If Isaac did not insist, Abraham would not have taken that sword, that knife in hand, at all. A man in his elder age has a son finally, has another son whom he loved, but the mother says, Sarah, get rid of that kid. He's mitzachekot, he's sporting with our son Isaac. Sarah, very much the rival in this case here. The poor concubine gets her wish, all right, Ishmael will have his own tribe. It's Abraham who's weak. Abraham who says over Sodom and Gomorrah, should the judge of all the earth not do justly? And then eventually getting down to 10, and there isn't any, and the dialogue ends. Isaac, you're my progenitor, says to his Abba, do it! And at the last moment, Elohim, Elohim, are the words of the angel of God, suggesting a certain stoppage. You passed the test. You've shown that you're fortified, you're an upright man. Is this how God tests his servants? And let me be very frank with you. The other test, if you don't mind me telling you, is the crucifixion. Does Jesus go gladly to that cross? After all, he's Mashiach ben David, isn't he? After all, he's the God, Lord, King of God. After all, he's the incarnate God. Forget about death. These are stories of your theology. Jesus is portrayed, in my opinion, as the authentic Jew when he walks to that little crucifixion over there and says, Abba, lama sabachthani. Why are you forsaking me? No answer. And nothing can be more deafening than the silence of God. Nothing. Go back to your Rosh Hashanah Orthodox service. The Kol D'Mamah, the voice of silence, is the terminology used by the liturgy in regard to God's blowing of the shofar. God, you would expect, blows the shofar. It's heard in all the heavens. But here it's a still, silent voice. Nothing is more deafening than the silence of God. And I'm so sorry to disappoint you. You think God is delighted about this? Has it ever dawned on you that we portray God in anthropomorphic language? The language we use is our language. Can you at least agree with me that God can shed tears? I'm sorry if I cry. God cries. My children Israel, what can I do? You're killing us, God. Desecration of the Holocaust, just use that. Do something. What are you doing? No answer. That is why I reject that word Holocaust. That word Holocaust implies a burnt offering demanded by God. I don't want that word. On the other hand, if God is not present with the decimated millions, where's the justice? The act is done, and now I need to pick up the ashes. I need God. You have now the background, and you're now going to have a midrash, an interpretation, and please don't get angry at me. Mashiach ben David is your promised Mashiach. Walks with Isaac and every Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. They visit the Eibush. They knock on his blue door, his celestial door, and say, "Good Jantiv, Janatava." 1939 comes, and they knock on the door. The years gone by, that door swung open. It's closed. Mashiach ben David says to Yitzchak, "What's going on? Do you think the Eibush is all right? Is he sleeping?" You can't even think of these words. God is God is God is God. Everything else now is narrative. They eventually open the door. And God completely is hidden behind his prayer shawl. Can't see his face, can't see him. Mashiach or Isaac, I'm not quite sure which one made the determination, said, "We got to see him. Panim el panim, face to face." You don't see face to face unless you're Moshe Rabbeinu. But you do have in chapter 5 of Deuteronomy, panim bit panim, panim bit panim, panim bit panim, face into face, and the fire is burning at Horeb. Horeb is the place where the Ten Commandments is given, in addition to the other narrative found in Exodus, where the place is called Sinai. Deuteronomy chapter 5, the fire is at the mountain called Horeb, and God speaks into the face of the people. We have a right to see the face of God. And the talit was removed from God's presence. And Isaac went oy, Mashiach ben David went ve. You don't translate oy ve. What's happened? Is Hashem present when the talus is removed? His presence is there. But something's missing. Eibush, where's your tefillin? Where's your head tefillin, which has the words, "Who is like you among the nations, Israel"? Why is it missing? God is forever tarnished if Israel becomes extinct. And in Jewish tradition, if you are to drop the tefillin, you're supposed to pick it up and kiss it and caress it, give it tzedakah, fast. Pick up your tefillin, God. Can't you pick up your tefillin? So many times at a 2-year community college for hundreds of people, I went through a whole demonstration of picking up the tefillin and showing the background pictures of the Brits and the other allies shoving ashes into pits. Ashes of our people and others. Why do the machines shove the ashes into the pits? Why don't you, God, pick up the ashes? a question that gets no answer, a question that you struggle with, a question that you're bequeathed with when you have the word Israel. Israel, Jacob called Israel, Sarita, you fight with man, fight with God. The Elohim there is reference to an angel, I guess. And the bottom line is in Genesis, and you will prevail. It's terribly important that you understand those words, because from that, we now move into the Jesus framework. What exactly am I getting at with the trouble of Christians using the term Jewish Jesus, which, by the way, is made very popular because Christian academics are using that terminology? Why does Zev.Garber not use that term, such as Rabbi Jesus, etc.? Is because of the association of the term prophet. A colleague of mine, a woman of renowned respect, you should invite her to UCF. Her name is Amy Levine. You talk about Jewish scholars on Jesus, we dominate it. Mark Rettler, now at Emory, Amy Levine of Villanova over there, I guess. Vanderbilt, that's the co-school. Zev.Garber you can throw in. You throw in Ken Hansen, Herb Bassett. We are all identified Jews who work on Jesus. Without the Jewish component, you don't have Jesus scholarship today. I'm giving you a factuality. Just like that, just like that. People have noticed it, they haven't noticed it. And now when they look around, it's the Jews. Only this time, it's for leadership. And let me make it again personal. The Roman Catholic Church, which I know something about. And for the record, they have a canonized saint of the Holocaust by the name of Saint Edith Stein, Maria Teresa. She was an agnostic. She tried desperately, but Judaism did not speak to her. She's a German, Austrian, I believe, background. She eventually became a Catholic nun. She also was part with her sister, Rosa, 2 of the 6 million. Ken introduced comments about me that I'm one of the people responsible for getting rid of that word Holocaust. You can't get rid of that word Holocaust. Elie Wiesel was the one who put that word on the mark. He didn't originate the word, but it was he who sat in Oxford when I gave the talk where I was disturbed about that word because he was a plenary speaker for a conference called Remembering for the Future in the late 1980s. I asked Wiesel in my article I wrote with Bruce Zuckman with the word Holocaust, published in Modern Judaism at first and then republished with editions, including online. Why don't you write down the computer reference, www.thetorah.com. Write down a very important source of critical scholarship done by Orthodox, Orthoprax, whatever rabbis you want to call us, or scholars. Major source of information. Last Yom HaShoah, Professor Zev.Garber wrote the article. The words I use as part of my identity. Does the language influence the way we think? Absolutely. There's no one in this room here, you will shake your head this way, who's going to disagree with me. Language is how you think what you think. Period. Period. And I wrote the new article on Holocaust. Only this time I added something I never knew before. The Armenians did not realize that the New York Times had articles about their genocide and burning of their villages with the word Holocaust used back in the 19th period, the period of the Armenian genocide. I wasn't even aware of this stuff. Even though I mastered the word Holocaust, I'm now learning new stuff about it. The word is quite used before the Jews even hit upon that word, or Mr. Wiesel. I asked Elie, why did you use this word? His words to me, I still remember, in a handwritten letter to me. He said, I needed a word to capture the fire. I needed a word to capture the fire of the burning children. You don't go through a show of people without the image of burning children. Oh, you don't understand. It's simplest Torah time. It's simplest Torah. You take the Torah and you dance. It's okay to smile. I see faces here with your clean face. Try to imagine 13, 14-year-old children with beards, scrubbing beards. They're about to be marched into the heavens. It's Simchas Torah. Where's the Torah scroll? There's no Torah scroll to hold on to. You have Hasidic youngsters dressed in their naked skin, earlocks, clothes removed, dancing, Simchas Torah, dancing into the flames. Oh my God, Chris. Why are you shocked by this? By rational mind, you don't possibly dance into an oven. But it's Simchas Torah. The Nazis are not going to break us. Christians have an orthodoxy belief in Christ, the pure one, the sinless one. All sins are gone. And why did Jesus fight that cross? I don't want to die, Abishai. I don't want to die. Why are you silent? And you're going to tell me Jesus is not Jewish? I would kick, I would scream, I would do everything to stop this. Including, if you mind me saying it, killing a Nazi. Which you have every right to do. But Hasidim dance into the flames and Jesus screams at the silence. Called a prophet by my friend Amy Jo Levine. I cannot accept that. The Christ found a verse found in Deuteronomy. There is a phrase regarding the prophet yet to be born as Moses instructed, and people identify this as Jesus. Some people say a Nabi Kenegdo, a prophet like him, to refer to Elijah. But the test of a prophet in Deuteronomy 18, the words which are spoken, if they are not fulfilled in the lifetime of the people, they are false words. God's no stupid being. He knows exactly how to back himself. If the words didn't happen, then God, you're insane. You're not the real candidate. For Jesus to be the prophet imagined by Moses, then death cannot be, if only because, historically speaking, the redemption of his people did not take place. The land is still occupied by the Roman conquerors. And on tape, you listen to Zev.Garber. You zoom in. Two things you do. You have your assignment. You do www.torah.com, kick in Zev.Garber, Purdue University. You'll see the man standing right before you. And in simple, strong language, the NPR interview called WBAA at Purdue University, I said, I don't want my fellow Jews to refer to Jesus as a false prophet. I'm saving Jesus! And then at the end of my little quote there, and then did some more questions to me, I quoted German language, which I know something about. Last thing is, what would Jesus say by me proclaiming he's not a prophet of Israel? The highest title you can give Jesus is a teacher. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher. No prophet or prophets, whatever title you want to give Moses, the title stands out is Mored, a teacher. And so let me give you several illustrations of teaching. Number one, where does the authority of teaching come from? Do I have time on this, my host? Okay.
It's late, 4:30.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if I feel you're getting a little antsy, I would take a break. I normally don't need a break. But I know my audience, and the minute I feel you're getting antsy, I know how to scream. And if that doesn't work, I know how to jump on a table. I told you before, you didn't hear me, I said I had Mossad training. Take my words seriously. Right away, Moshe Pele is just sitting. What's going on with Zev? Don't worry, Moshe will reveal the secret.
Maybe we should have some questions in Q&A.
Okay, maybe that's better. Before I do some readings with you, let's pause for a moment. I think that's wise. Yeah, I need guidance, people. Please, this is something important to me. Let me pause at this moment. It's a good juncture. Take some questions from the floor. And then what I want to do is do the reading of the Shema with you. And do also Jewish tradition, how it sees Scripture, and see how that works from the Christian perspective on Jesus. Are there any general questions that you might have? All right, let me make it very personal right now. Are you people all members of a religious community? You mean to say I've got a group here which does not fulfill the American status of Jews or a bunch of agnostics? Do I have agnostic Jews sitting here?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I say the word that bothers everybody? Do I have some Christians sitting here?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me get very personal. Episcopalian or Presbyterian Church? Sir?
Non-denominational.
Non-denominational. That's as evangelical as can be, and I like that. Church on the way, I'll make reference to that church in a second. Sir, you look like a good Presbyterian elder. Roman Catholic, all right, with those 2 points of view, permit me now to spin off. Roman Catholic and evangelical. Or, is that what you said, sir? Okay. Church on the way. Get down that name. Church on the way. Church on the Way is a very interesting name of a church. It's located on Sherman Way in the San Fernando Valley. So the way is because of Sherman Way. Church on the Way is a mega church, has probably 15 to 20,000 members that attend Sunday services or whatever. They also are the sponsors of a Messianic Jewish Studies program at the King's University. The King's University in Dallas area, Dallas, Texas. I mean, I was there last March for the American, well, what they have there is the Ackerman Center for Holocaust Studies at the University of Texas at Dallas, at the University of Texas at Dallas, and the council, the meeting was the annual Scholars Conference on the Holocaust in Churches. Very much involved with a group organized by 2 Christians, now deceased. Hubert Locke passed away this past year, a black Christian minister, and Franklin Hamilton Littell was the organizer back in the day, whose second wife is a Jewish woman, still living, her name was Littell. In fact, let me give it the Littell name. Franklin Hamilton Littell is the founder, according to traditions, of Holocaust studies in this country, a Christian Methodist, also a bishop, wears his collar when he wants to. A true story written up in a whole anthology that came out of this on it, and a part of my chapter was the story of what happened that day in Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come in the background. Zev.Garber, traditional Jew, walks Friday night. Where am I going to go? Wear my jacket, wear my yarmulke, wear my black hat, wear whatever I wear there. And knocked on the window is Mr. Franklin Littell. Coming on in. Franklin's sitting by himself at a restaurant in the hotel. Sees me walking. What are you walking? I call him, come inside. Good Shabbos, or Shabbat Shalom, says the Methodist minister. How are you doing, Franklin? Sit! And then he says, let's have some meal. I said, what am I going to eat? You know I can't eat this stuff. He said, don't worry. I want you to say the Kiddush. The Kiddush? I said, Franklin, let's do the Motzi. No! Kiddush! I said, Franklin, I have a problem. I don't have to go into this stuff. I have a problem. Where's the kosher wine? The stuff there's straight for me. So I tried to somehow get out of the stuff saying that this and that and that and this. And he looks at me and says, no, actually what I did is I said, Franklin, you know, you shouldn't be drinking liquor anyway. I know the methods. Alcohol is forbidden. I give him a talk like that, Zev.Garber, he responds and says, I don't tell you how to keep kosher. You don't tell me what Methodists drink. Furthermore, it's the Europeans that don't have alcohol. Bring on the wine. What am I going to embarrass him? I can't say the Kiddush. As God is my witness, at that moment, 1, 2, 3 men come walking in. How you doing, Brother Franklin? When Christians talk to Christians, how you doing, brother? 3 righteous Christians come in. And the conversation went to one Methodist talk, one Mennonite talk, one this and that. And somehow we forgot about the wine. And we all sat down. I did the Motzi, which is okay. Kansas City, here I come. I saw 3 angels somehow Shalom Aleichem coming and somehow dissuading the Christian Methodists for having a Jew say something over a drinkable wine. God works in mysterious ways. But the Methodist bishop says to me, don't tell me what I should drink. I don't tell you what kosher is. Don't tell me what I can drink. Try to be polite, but I can't do it. TKC, Church on the Way, they did something unusual. They invited me with the title, Orthodox Jew teaches this and teaches that, question and answer. Little did I realize that David Rudolph, who wears a yarmulke that looks like a Hasidic kippah, his Messianics like to wear head coverings as well, introduced me with the following words, Zev.Garber is to show us how to do teshuvah. You've got to see the tape. I actually am told by this rabbi who introduced me, here's my pen, I'm going to teach them how to do teshuvah. Teshuvah in your fancy English is repentance. Teshuvah also means to return. And basically that's why they invited me. I never thought that was the agenda. I know David, he's part of a symposium we did on Jesus. I have him in writing, I have me in writing, he knows how I write, da-da-da-da-da-da. And this is how he introduces me. The next day, the rabbi, Professor David, who got a PhD by the way from Cambridge, said, could you teach our class how to wear tefillin? I told him. Teach them how to wear tefillin, come in for a Friday night, for a Monday night lecture to the whole community of doing teshuvah. This is how I'm introduced before a Messianic Jewish community. Is he doping me? Or is he serious? Ladies and gentlemen, they're very serious. The Messianic Jewish community, and I'll bring it out to the Catholics, are terribly serious about the Jewish responsibility and accountability. How much more so because Jesus is that way. So it is understood by them. The Roman Catholics I know a lot about. They quote me. The official encyclical on the beatification of Edith Stein, saint of the Holocaust in the Roman Catholic Church, quotes the position of Zev.Garber, me, of what I feel to be a problem with this. Meaning what? I respect Edith and her sister Rosa. She becomes a Catholic, her sister becomes a Catholic, and both of them become nuns. Both of them are rounded up in Holland. Both of them are taken to the death camps. And on the words of Edith Stein, she says to her sister, Rosa, it is good to die for our people. Let's repeat it again. It is good to die for our people. One word, I change. It's good to die with our people. For is sacrificial. Let's say you take opposition a second. I find a problem with that. Furthermore, in my opinion, as a Roman Catholic saint, etc., the church should honor her Catholicism, her marriage to God, as I understand that as well. They were symbolic for a marriage. Why do you need the Jewish one? But she's Jewish, Sev, and that's the whole issue with the Catholics. Permit me to just go one step further, then we'll take your question. The Roman Catholic Church, in my opinion, has a terrible eagerness, which I respect, and they have every right to make this claim. They don't want to be seen and respected by Jewish organizations, organized Jewry, if you will, as being righteous Gentiles. Jews as Jews, you have a pact with the nations of the world. You have the 7 laws of Noah based on the flood story business, and you have that which is called the Taryag, the 613 commandments, as represented by these, the word for fringe in Hebrew, and the symbolism of the fringes, which I'll go into. The so-called 7 laws of Noah are read back into the Torah by rabbinic exegesis, which is based upon a chapter 6 or thereabouts, in which you have the reference, here it is, chapter 9, based on the verses that say, who sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, and it said, because of what reason? For the image of God is man-made, And then sentence number, furthermore, at the beginning of that chapter, that's it. Chapter 9, sentence 1, God blessed Noah and his sons and said, be fruitful, multiply, words that were heard in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. That generation of two has been demolished by the flood. And then the new generation of mankind is be fruitful, and also the first negative of the commandments, don't shed man's blood. On these particular statements, rabbinic authority has developed what's called the B'nai Noach, the seven commandments of the children of Noah, nations of mankind, including one that says, eating flesh cut from a living animal is prohibited. The place was Siena College, a Franciscan school, a number of years ago, invited by a Jewish professor in charge of inter-Jewish Christian dialogue, whatever they have over there, in honor of the Archbishop of the state of New York, sitting in the audience, together with all kinds of clergy. And there was a big encounter of two professors, one Roman Catholic, one the Prof.Zev.Garber. The topic was the Jewish Jesus. My book. I also brought up the incident, which is very important for all Catholics, of how the Catholics now want to have recognition. We've always helped you guys out. How about responding? What do you want? We don't want more or less. We want to be seen like you. We don't want to be seen as a righteous church or a righteous nation. Before the Archbishop of the Roman Church, I said, you're right, you cannot be seen as a B'nai Noach. Based on what, Professor? On the verse I just read. The Catholics are among those Christians who believe when they take Holy Communion that the bread is the body and the wine is the blood of the living God. There's a verse found in John which actually says those very words. Transubstantiation, and language like that is very Platonic and very pagan, I might add. Plato's philosophy is responsible for that language of the body and the bread and the wine and the blood. So on that negativity, Catholic Church, you cannot be seen as a son of Noah, which is what they want. But what's the alternative? I then said it out loud. What do you want? Do you want to be like Jews? Are you willing to have a Friday night to Saturday night? Are you willing to have kosher at your table? Are you willing to do that? And you know what? The Archbishop, either out of jest or humor or out of support, said, why not? To which I will now say what I would say to him and did say to him. Are you crazy? Why do you have to be like Jesus? Are you that insincere about your conviction of being a Roman Catholic, being evangelical? Do I have to come among you at the King's University, and you see the tape there, and I'm introduced to bring everybody there to Teshuvah? Thank you for the honor, but what is the need for this? And maybe the bottom line is something from the New Testament. Justification of faith versus justification of law. I don't accept that word law. It doesn't exist. Torah does not mean law. It means teaching. All right, so the commandment system. The commandment systems do not deal with beliefs. There's absolutely not one commandment except the hero Israel, Lord thy God, Lord is one type of stuff that deals with belief. Everything is thou shalt do it, thou shalt not do it, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt save life. Everything is faction. And when you have a religion totally defined by belief, and when the belief begins to be cracked, then there's nothing that stops the whole structure from falling down. Sorry, my Gentile Christians. You are the branches. I'm quoting Paul now. You're not the root. Admittedly, in the mouth of Paul, you have this neither Jew nor Gentile type of stuff. You have other verses, such as the one I read from Corinthians over there, or Galatians. But Paul as Paul and Peter as Peter are the two groups that break away. Peter with the circumcision, and Paul simply says, if as long as I'm Saul, and circumcision is what we are as Jews, you don't have to require that on Gentiles. Stop it already. Pauline Christology and Christianity, quite frankly, is for Gentiles, not for Jews. And the Gentile somehow feels comfortable with Pauline Christology, is no different than what is with B'nai Noah. I don't want to be a son of Noah. I want to be a real Jew. Are you crazy? You know what's going to be required now? It's called a ritual of circumcision, among other things. I don't speak theory, people. I happen to have been married to a convert. And she came, Michelle Kennedy did, not for the Baptists, for the evangelicals, the Catholics, the Episcopalians. She came from the worst group of them all, at least in the West Coast, called the Mormons, Latter-day Saints. I'm probably the only Jew standing in front of you at a prayer show one that had a meeting in 1985 when I was invited by the state of Utah, due to the University of Utah. I was a guest I was for a whole week to give the address of the state rotunda about Yom HaShoah. 3 of the 12 apostles, as they're called, are Latter-day Saints, sat down with me with a kosher meal. David said to me, I still remember his name, how many times have you been to Israel? Oh, I've been here 12 times. David Ben Gurion. He mentions names one after another. What the hell did the Roman Catholic Church, rather the Roman Church want with me? They wanted my answer to why they're being questioned about their post-mortem, which is practiced by them, baptism, the baptism of the dead. You don't post-mortem Jews in a Jewish cemetery, especially if they're survivors who are dead from the Holocaust. They wanted my opinion, they got my opinion. And probably for the first time in the history of the Latter-day Saints, the Jewish people, you ready for this, children, are no longer called Gentiles. Ever since Joseph Smith, Jews have been called Gentiles. You're not even aware of it. The LDS group, when they southern, from the Jewish remnant from the Southern Kingdom, essentially is how they see their origin. When my wife at the time, Michelle, was excommunicated by the LDS Church, she got an invitation to come. I met their bishop. I'm a known entity in this part of the world. I said, Michelle, you stay home. I'm going. Why do you want to go? I want to go. And before Prof.Zev.Garber, as you see him right now, I was told what was happening, with the understanding that her total, rituals and privileges as a woman has been suspended because of this and that and this. But the door is always open. Do you now understand what's happening when you have organized religions, now seeing Judaism, Christianity, religions, as being on par, as being somehow different than it previously was? You can say that the church is doing teshuvah. And my fellow Jews, what the hell is wrong with you? Well, you're Christians. Stop this. If they're hungry for the Jewish part, should you not see your responsibility to share it? But it's difficult. One of the most revered conservative rabbis in the world before he passed was a yeshiva bacher with me at Salanta Yeshiva in the Bronx, New York. You'll know his name, Rabbi Harold Shuwas. Or look him up. His last congregation, a major conservative shul in Encino called Valley Bet Shalom, whose current chief rabbi there is a former student of mine. I go back years. I'm invited to the shul of VBS to give a Friday night sermonette. Yitzhak Greenberg, one of the better-known Jewish Orthodox theologians, is invited as well. And I'm sitting with Rabbi Shul. I said, he's talking. I've been talking in shul. I said, Rabbi, it's a service. Somehow when you're raised Orthodox, you have to talk during davening. Don't ask me. I was told by one of my students where I taught Jesus at the American Jewish University, by the way, formerly called University of Judaism, that Rabbi Shuwas had a beautiful bar mitzvah that day, and the father of the bat mitzvah girl addressed the congregation. And among his words, I thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity. Rabbi Harold Shuwas, the founding father of the Chavurah movement, bolted from his chair. Don't get angry. He shut the service down. It's about this. Father was a Messianic Jew. He said what he felt. before the conservative rabbi. Not only was he telling the father it's not right, he shut those service down. If I take a hand count right now, the rabbi sure is that probably half of you would say absolutely not. I was told by Mark Kinsler when we had that symposium on Jesus, sponsored by the National Association of Professors of Hebrew, because of and you better believe you all kinds of problems because of this. Mark Kinsler himself told the following story. He's one of the major theologians of Messianic Jews. One of the Messianics who somehow went to shul. Why not? They go to shul too. A Kohen, invited to the Torah for the priestly, priestly reading. First call of a Kohen. The conservative rabbi recognized who this man is, and no doubt privately and politely said, "Please sit down. Can't be called to the Torah." He didn't do what Shuais did. He didn't embarrass him. He went to him privately, spoke whatever he said. And what did the Messianic Jew do who went to a conservative shul? He did not rage, carry on, scream. He walked out of his section when the Torah was read. And then when the Musaf, the additional prayer after the Torah reading, was conducted, he walked back into service. And Mark Kinsler said to me and said to the audience, "This is what Jesus would have done." Yet, carry Jesus like that. Jesus would not shut anything down. He would turn the other cheek. He would show kindness and love. He would not go screaming. Mark Kinsler's example of what a Jew who believes in Jesus acts like. Unlike you and me who scream, "Get out of here. What are you doing?" Let me bring it home.
And I'm just wondering, we have only a few minutes left. I'm wondering if we have...
Well, then, I didn't expect all that. Okay, if so, then I got to shut down. There was a question you wanted to ask.
Yeah,
Let's just get to the question. Don't worry about more doing that.
a simple question. Your view of the resurrection of Jesus, is that myth, story, reality? Just your comments.
Okay, I'll give you a comment by reading, first of all, a letter. I'm not going to read the letter itself. This is a 2-page letter written by the managing editor. I met the major mover of this project, and no longer is this project going to be called Messianic Prophecy and Bible Project. I think it's a good way of getting this across. Official title of a major operation now beginning. It's actually been 2 years in the making, but no success until they came across the name Zev.Garber, and all of a sudden things are changing for them. In fact, that guy came in special to meet me on Monday of this past week. Where the one who writes the letter, quoting me all over the place from the talk I gave at TKC, the King's University. Messianic Prophecy Bible Project, the Jewish Christian Dialogue. That title has changed. No longer is the word Messianic used because it's not meant to be a missionary type of thing, and so it's going to be called Jewish and Christian Exposition on the Bible. The title itself changes everything. The articles they're requesting are Jewish written articles. Garber writes his article, Ken writes his article. There ain't nothing missionary about the articles. If anything, it questions the whole thing about the theology and the theocracy of Jesus. And my first statement that they quote from me here is something that says, Messianic and Rabbinic Jews, that is, rabbinical Jews, are united by God, Torah, Israel. And then they differ in the following categories. Biblical exegesis, reading the Bible, understanding the application of halakha, meaning dealing with Jewish law, fulfillment of prophecy, role of Messiah, Messianic age, resurrection of the dead, and life immortal. There is a total distinction between Messianics, who are Christians as Christians are, and Jews as Jews are. The resurrection of the dead is a basic premise in Judaism. And maybe the best way for me to give it to you is the so-called Ikarei Hadat, the 13 principles of Judaism, understood and codified by the name of Maimonides. It is questionable whether the famous Rambam actually is the author, as it's given, of the 13 principles. But let's assume this. Principles number 12 and 13. Ani ma'amin b'emunah shlema. I believe with utmost faith. Keep in mind, Judaism is less of a belief system, but somehow with a statement of belief and faith, you have to use the word ani ma'amin. And one of them deals with the resurrection of the dead, and the other one deals with the coming of Mashiach. 13th principle is resurrection of the dead. 12th principle is the coming of Mashiach. Mashiach is not an individual. Mashiach is Yemei Mashiach, a messianic age. The so-called death camp march of our Jewish brothers and sisters and others was not Ani Ma'amin b'Tchiyat HaMetim, but Ani Ma'amin b'Yavo Mashiach. But they're burning you. They're burning you. Do you understand the legacy of this tradition? You give your hope for those who are still alive. Let there be a messianic age, that this type of tragedy will never be ever again. We don't speak about the resurrection of the dead, even though it's part of our concepts. When they lacerated the famous Rabbi Akiva, so the story is told in the Ila Eskara, these I will remember. I say it every Musaf, Yom Kippur. I wrote about the 93 girls, which is said to be part of the conservative ritual for Yom Kippur. The martyrdom. The famous Rabbi Akiva, who learned his first letter of Hebrew so tradition at the age of 40. He lived as long as Moses, 120. And when they were lacerating him, Rabbi Akiva smiled. You don't smile, they're burning you, Akiva. And why did he smile? Because all my life I've said the words, Ve'achavtev Hashem Lokecha, you have to love the Lord your God, B'chol levavcha, v'lo yachar, b'chol nefesh, v'lo yisol, v'lo yodecha, v'lo yisret. I've never been able to fulfill the three prerogatives. As they're burning me, I can now fulfill it. And Akiva smiles.
They might have smiled because their suffering was ending.
But the fact that you have that type of phraseology blows me away. There's a question by a scholar. Do you want to ask? One more question.
One more.
Or comment.
I got to ask you, Dr. Garber, knowing I'm a Reform rabbi, why do the Orthodox, in your opinion, why do all of the Yom Kippur confessions of all the denominations, Orthodox confession or Reform, list only moral and ethical violations and not the ritual violations? If the ritual violations are so important, why do the confessions that we recite only list the moral and ethical?
Would you care to illustrate what you mean by a ritual confession?
We don't confess that we didn't keep the Sabbath. We don't confess that we didn't keep kosher. We don't confess that we didn't put on talit and tefillin. We confess that we wronged other people. We confess that we were mean. We confess we were dishonest. We confess that we were disrespectful to parents and teachers. Those are the kinds of things we confess.
All right, good question. Never thought of this question before. The only response I can give you is the Ten Commandments. The so-called Ten Commandments, they wrote the 10 words, the Decalogue. The first 5 is said to be Ben Adam L'Makom, between man and the presence of God. Then Ben Adam L'Chavero. I think basically if what you say is to be doing, the so-called confessional, etc., is essentially how you act to your fellow man rather than the transgressions you may be doing on your own and therefore violations. So let me explain it this way. The Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, always in the collective we, never in the singular. In Jewish rabbinic tradition, there are 3 terms that could qualify for a transgression. Chet is the so-called sin, whereby you do something, you're not aware of it. For example, I have M&M on my table in my classroom, which I had last week. I always look for a U, O, or K, or something that indicates it's kosher, and somebody left it there. So what am I going to do with this stuff here? I saw some of my Gentile students take it. No, Zen, why'd you have these? I'm cold, said my students. And then finally, one of my Orthodox students said, it's okay, Zev, the box always has a KO on it, or UD on it, in other words, Orthodox kosher congregation, but dairy food. I don't know what to do with this stuff. If that's meant to be kosher, then it should be kosher. But let's assume I eat it because of hunger. So you can say that's a hate. And our vote, meaning I don't know what I did eat. I didn't know. And our vote is I conscientiously do something wrong. And that's also not so bad. The pesha part, the rebellious part, is the very difficult one. But let me give you an answer to what you said. There's a famous medieval hymn, basically the Sana Tokev, as I know from the Ashkenazi pronunciation. Who shall live and who shall die, da 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 da. And then three things, I'll be reading at the Reach Hazera. Three things avert the evil decree. One is called teshuvah, one is called tefillah, one is called tzedakah. The word teshuvah is not the word repentance. In my opinion, it's returning to who you are, your peoplehood, collectively speaking. The word tefillah is between self and upstairs, self and God. And the word tzedakah is between you and your fellow man, doing acts of righteous kindness. Three things avert an evil decree. One is returning to self and people, one is returning to God, as it were, and one is extending to the outside. The individual is important, but when it all comes and goes, it's the Amka that prevails.
Zev, we thank you so very, very much. I'm reminded of three very important words in Hebrew.